Welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're heading back to the 1970s,
Oh, yeah?
to 1970s Michigan,
Okay.
a time and place that was absolutely gripped by fear because of a string of horrific crimes.
Yeah,
The Oakland County Child Killer case.
right.
This case, it's a real head-scratcher. You have 4 confirmed victims,
Mhm.
potentially more,
Yeah,
an investigation that was massive for its time,
absolutely.
and yet,
Indeed.
decades later, we still don't know who the killer is.
That's right.
So in this deep dive, we're going to be wading through police reports, witness testimonies, even a documentary,
Okay.
all to try to give you a clear picture of this really tangled case.
Yeah, this case, it's like a giant puzzle with pieces scattered everywhere. We'll try to put those pieces together for you in this deep dive.
Yeah.
But I think what makes this one so compelling
Yeah.
are the human elements.
Right.
You know, the victims, the families, the investigators who dedicated their lives to this case.
Yeah.
These are the threads that weave through all the, the cold, hard facts. And
Absolutely.
Oh,
And
yeah.
speaking of the victims,
yeah,
that's really where it all begins. We need to understand who they were
right.
before we can even begin to grasp the impact of what happened.
I agree.
We're talking about 4 kids, all between the ages of 10 and 12.
Yeah.
Mark Stebbins, Jill Robinson, Christine Mihalich, and Timothy King. Their lives were cut tragically short.
So sad.
And each of their cases adds a layer to this puzzle that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, exactly. Take Mark Stebbins, for example.
Yeah?
He was just 12 when he vanished from an American Legion home.
Wow.
4 agonizing days later, his body was found
Oh, God.
in a parking lot.
Awful.
He'd been strangled, abused, and there were signs that he'd been held captive.
Oh.
You know, that period of captivity,
Yeah.
that's what gets to me. It
Yeah.
suggests a level of premeditation
Right.
that is just chilling.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then you have Jill Robinson, also 12, who disappeared after an argument with her mother.
Wow.
A detail that just adds to the tragedy.
Right.
She was found 3 days later by a highway shot in the face.
Gosh.
But here's where it gets interesting. The autopsy showed she was actually cared for before her death.
Really?
Said even.
Wow. This is where we start to see a possible pattern, or at least an attempt at one.
Okay.
The killer is taking steps to control the situation, almost like they're playing a role.
Right.
With Mark, it was the captivity with Jill, this
Yeah.
bizarre act of caretaking.
Yeah.
It's disturbing and confusing,
Yeah.
which is partly why this case has been so difficult to crack.
Okay, so we have 2 victims, both 12, both found relatively quickly.
Right.
But with Christine Mihalich,
Mm-hmm.
things take an even darker turn.
Oh.
She was only 10
Wow.
when she vanished from a 7-Eleven.
Oh, my gosh.
19 days.
Wow.
19 days before her body was found, and this time she was smothered.
Think about that for a second. 19 days.
Yeah.
This isn't a crime of opportunity anymore.
Right.
The killer is holding on to Christine for almost 3 weeks,
Yeah.
which suggests a level of organization and control that goes beyond what we've seen so far.
Right.
And the method of killing changes, too.
Yeah.
Is this experimentation?
Yeah.
A way to silence the victim? We can only speculate.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes this case so fascinating and so frustrating.
Yeah, it's like the killer is evolving, becoming bolder,
Yeah.
and then you have Timothy King,
Right.
the last confirmed victim.
Yeah.
He was 11, last seen talking to a man in a blue Gremlin,
Okay.
a car that will become a really significant piece of this puzzle later on.
Gotcha.
His body was found 6 days after his abduction, and what's striking about Timothy's case is the grooming.
Oh, really?
He was cleaned, fed, his hair was even combed.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
You know, if we're trying to categorize this killer based on what we're seeing,
Yeah.
you have to consider the meticulous nature of these crimes.
Yeah.
You know, the bodies were placed for discovery. There's this disturbing element of control and a potential psychological component
Yeah.
that goes beyond the act of killing itself.
Right.
This isn't someone just lashing out.
Right.
There's a thought process, there's a plan, and that's a terrifying realization.
Yeah. 4 young lives, each case unique, yet linked by this thread of really meticulous cruelty.
Right.
The question is, who could be behind such horrific acts?
Yeah, that's where the investigation comes in. And trust me,
Yeah.
this is where things get really complicated.
Oh, boy.
We're talking about the largest murder investigation in U.S. history at the time.
Wow.
Thousands of tips, countless leads, and yet no clear answers.
So how do we even begin to understand an investigation of that scale?
Yeah.
Where do we even start?
Well, we have to start with the task force, you know?
Okay.
They formed a dedicated team to handle this case because it was clear they were dealing with something extraordinary.
Yeah.
The pressure was immense. You have 4 murdered children,
Right.
a terrified community, and the eyes of the nation are on you.
Right.
They were determined to find the killer.
Mm-hmm.
But they were also up against an incredibly complex case.
Yeah.
And, it was a lot to handle.
So they have this massive task force, thousands of tips pouring in. It sounds like they were drowning in information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did they ever catch a break? Was there anything that kind of pointed them in the specific direction?
There were definitely some leads that stood out, some more promising than others. Early on, they focused on known child molesters in the area.
Okay.
One of those was Archibald Sloan. They actually found hairs in his car.
Okay.
That matched hairs found on 2 of the victims.
Wait a minute. They found matching hairs.
Yeah, Mark Stebbins and Timothy King.
That sounds like a pretty big deal. Why wasn't he arrested immediately?
Here's where it gets tricky. The DNA testing available at the time wasn't as advanced as it is today.
Right.
They could tell the hairs came from the same person,
Yeah.
but they couldn't definitively say it was Sloan.
So it was a link, but not a slam dunk. Did they ever figure out whose hair it was?
It would take decades.
Right.
Yes, in 2012, they used new DNA technology to re-examine those hairs. What they discovered was shocking.
What?
The hairs didn't belong to Sloan. They belonged to an unknown man, someone Sloan knew or had contact with.
Wow. So all those years they had this crucial piece of evidence, but technology held them back. It makes you wonder if the case could have been solved sooner.
It's definitely a thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
Forensic science has advanced so much in recent years, it makes you realize how limitations in technology can impact an investigation, especially one as high-profile as this.
Speaking of technology, didn't they also find a buried car that might be connected to the case?
You're thinking of the blue AMC Gremlin that
Right.
was discovered buried in a farm field back in 2013?
Right. That car. Did they ever confirm if it was the gremlin, and did they find anything inside that could lead them to the killer?
Unfortunately, a lot of the details surrounding that discovery have been kept under wraps. We know they investigated it,
Yeah.
but the findings haven't been publicly released. It's one of the frustrating things about this case. So much information is shrouded in secrecy.
It makes you wonder if there's something they're not telling us. But, okay, so we have Sloan, mysterious hair, the buried gremlin. Were there any other strong suspects?
There was another man, Chris Bush, who was considered a very strong suspect for a while.
Okay.
He was the son of a General Motors executive and was linked to a child pornography ring,
Mm-hmm.
tragically. Bush committed suicide in 1978, shortly after being questioned by police in his apartment. They found a sketch of a screaming boy
Oh, wow.
that looked a lot like Mark Stebbins, along with some other disturbing items.
So Bush is a suspect. He commits suicide. They find incriminating evidence in his apartment. It sounds like they were closing in on him. Was that the end of the road for Bush as a suspect?
For a long time, it seemed like Bush was the most likely culprit.
Yeah.
His suicide, the evidence it all seemed to fit. But then in 2012, the same year, they retested the hair from Sloan's car. They also ran DNA tests on evidence related to Bush.
And what happened? Did Bush's DNA match any of the evidence from the crime scenes?
No, it didn't. He was completely exonerated.
Yeah.
It was a huge blow to the investigation.
Yeah.
They'd seemingly been so close to a resolution,
Right.
but it turned out to be another dead end.
So if it wasn't Sloan and it wasn't Bush, who were the investigators left with?
There was another man, Ted Lamborghini, a retired auto worker, who was also linked to a child sex ring.
Okay.
He was on their radar early on, but he refused to take a polygraph test, which only raised suspicions.
Refusing a polygraph isn't exactly an admission of guilt, though, is it?
You're right, it's not.
Yeah.
But in a case like this, where there's so much uncertainty,
Right.
even the smallest details can become significant.
Yeah.
With Lamborghini, it wasn't just the polygraph, it was a certain profile.
Yeah.
Known predator lived in the area at the time,
Right.
but they never had enough to charge him.
Okay, so we have these suspects, Sloan, Bush, Lamborghini, each with their own set of clues and questions. It's a lot to process. Was there anyone else who emerged as a potential lead in this case?
Well, this is where the story takes a really strange turn. In 2010, a mysterious figure known only as Jeff contacted the authorities.
Jeff?
He claimed to have information that could solve the case, but he refused to reveal anything unless certain conditions were met.
Hold on, Jeff. What kind of conditions are we talking about? And if he has information that could solve the case, why wouldn't he just come forward?
That's the million-dollar question. Jeff has been incredibly cryptic. He's hinted at satanic rituals, pagan holidays, even connections to other unsolved murders.
Wow.
But he's never provided concrete evidence.
So what does he want? What are his conditions?
He's demanded specific information about the Allen letter, which was sent to a psychiatrist working on the case back in the 70s. The letter claimed to be from an accomplice of the killer, someone who was forced to participate in the abductions.
Okay.
Jeff also wants assurances that the case will be handled by a competent investigative team. He doesn't trust the local authorities, even accusing them of mishandling the investigation and possibly covering up evidence.
Wait, he's accusing the police of a cover-up that's a serious allegation. Do you think there's any truth to it?
It's hard to say. The Oakland County Child Killer case has been plagued by rumors and conspiracy theories for decades.
Right.
Some people believe there was a cover-up, that powerful individuals were involved and protected the killer. Others believe the police simply made mistakes,
Right.
that they were overwhelmed by the scale of the investigation and missed crucial clues.
So where does that leave Jeff? Is he a legitimate source with valuable information, or is he just trying to stir the pot?
That's the mystery, isn't it? He could be the key to solving this case, or he could be a distraction, a hoaxer who's preying on the family's hopes for closure. The authorities seem cautious,
Yeah.
but they haven't dismissed him entirely.
It sounds like Jeff adds another layer of complexity to an already incredibly complex case.
Absolutely. He's a wild card. And his emergence decades after the crimes just proves that this case is far from over this. The fact that we're still talking about it, still trying to make sense of it all, speaks to the enduring power of this mystery.
Yeah, it's hard to shake that feeling of unease. We've covered so much ground here, the victims, the suspects, the evidence, the rumors, the theories, and yet we're still left with more questions than answers. What does it all mean?
It leaves us with a profound sense of the unknown. The Oakland County Child Killer case,
Yeah.
despite all the efforts to solve it, remains a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder that justice isn't always served
Right.
and closure isn't always attainable.
Especially for the families, those who lost children,
Yeah.
that lack of closure
It's
must be just an incredible burden to carry.
absolutely to know that the person who took your child's life
Right.
might still be out there living a seemingly normal life.
Yeah.
That has to be an incredibly difficult reality to face.
Yeah, it highlights the importance of continued investigation, of never giving up hope, even when the odds seem insurmountable. And there have been developments even in recent years, right?
You're right. They administered a polygraph test to Arch Sloan,
Oh, wow.
the suspect with the hair found in his car,
Yeah.
as recently as 2019.
2019. That's amazing. It shows that they haven't given up on this case. Did Sloan pass the polygraph?
He didn't. According to reports, there were signs of deception when he was questioned about his involvement in the killings.
Oh.
But it's important to remember that polygraph results aren't foolproof.
Right.
They're not admissible in court, and there's always room for interpretation.
So it's another piece of the puzzle, but not the definitive answer everyone's been waiting for. What about Jeff? Has there been any movement there? Has he revealed anything new?
Unfortunately, no. Jeff remains a shadow, a voice whispering from the darkness.
Right.
He's made contact sporadically over the years,
Yeah.
but he hasn't provided any concrete evidence to support his claims.
It's frustrating. It's like he holds the key to unlocking this mystery, but he's dangling it just out of reach.
I think what Jeff represents, whether he's a legitimate source or a hoaxer, is the enduring fascination with this case.
Yeah.
People are still trying to make sense of it, to find the missing pieces,
Right.
to understand the darkness that led to these tragedies.
Maybe that's what makes this case so compelling. You
Yeah.
know, it's not just about finding the killer. It's about trying to understand how the motivations that drive someone to commit such horrific acts.
And perhaps that's the most unsettling aspect of the Oakland County Child Killer case. It's a testament to the enduring power of the unknown.
Right.
Some questions may never be fully answered,
Yeah.
but the search for truth, the pursuit of justice, that fire continues to burn.
Even after all these years, we've examined the victims, the suspects, the evidence, and the enduring mystery that continues to grip this case while we may not have definitive answers. We hope this deep dive has provided you with a deeper understanding of the Oakland County Child Killer case, its complexities, and its profound impact on those involved.
And as we conclude this deep dive, we leave you with this final thought.
Yeah.
What would it take to solve this case? Would Jeff coming forward finally bring closure, or does the answer lie buried somewhere in the evidence, waiting for someone to connect the dots? It's a case that continues to challenge us, to remind us that even in a world obsessed with solving crimes,
Right.
some mysteries remain stubbornly unsolved. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep exploring the unknown.
See you next time.